welcome back to Off the Cuff, a Brightman special. Sorry if I'm a bit sketchy like. Obviously week 1 of season 2, there was 3 of us. Week 2, me and Josh. Week 3, it's just me. So if you're any good at recognising those mathematic patterns that we had to do, or that maybe you have to do when you do a job interview, as online tests, you might have guessed that, next week is going to be none of us. So, no, I hope that's not the case. I'm sure we'll all be back next week. I will definitely be around. Let me take a little sip of this. This is the Ultra Black one, which I just walked into the corner shop and I was really disappointed to see they had no Monster Zeros. And then I saw this one. I've never had this one before. Cherry is actually my favourite flavour, so. Doesn't really taste much of cherry, which is quite disappointing. So green is still the best. Good day for me today because I just turned up when I wanted. Didn't need to be a bang on time. No one's waiting for me, apart from the podcast room. And therefore, it's all on my terms. I'm a bit hot. Very nice day out in London today. And it's the 18th of May on a date recording, which means that tomorrow, 3 years ago tomorrow, was the day I won my pro card. So there's a little bit of fact for you. I got so many suggestions. So firstly, thank you for suggesting. There's honestly way too many, in fact, but I am very appreciative of all the ideas. And obviously, I'm going to try and kind of not condense it as such, but bring them together in a way that makes for like a digestible and chronological story, as it were. But loads of the questions are going to be answered within that. So I'm not going to go through all these questions. See all those? And answer them one by one because I just think it makes for a really disjointed and unenjoyable listen. So what I will do is just, I'm going to sort of talk through, I guess, my story, but in doing that, I will answer a lot of the questions that are in here. And then if I feel like I'm stuck at the end and I've not done enough, then I will perhaps do a bit of a quickfire Q&A. So with that said, the topics for this podcast, if you like, I'm going to talk about sort of where it all began for me and way before that, in fact, and what I think sort of impacted who I am today, I guess. And actually, this is some of the stuff that in my last bout of counselling, therapy, whatever, we went over, and it was actually quite interesting to sort of get an insight into that because I'd never really thought about it before. So that's quite interesting. And then I'm going to talk about adulthood, early adulthood, how I thought life was going to go versus how it actually went. I definitely had this unrealistic expectation of life's going to be easy. I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this. Family, kids, bang, and that's how life will go. Obviously, it's not gone anything like that, but that is a good thing. Then I'm going to go in detail about my time at John Lewis. So that sort of corporate life, I guess the few years that sort of made me who I am today, or what I am today in terms of an IFBB pro, an online coach, how that all came to fruition, how turning pro changed everything almost overnight, and then the COVID lockdown, how I turned that from an opportunity, or from what I thought was going to be a disaster to a massive opportunity. And then we'll talk a little bit about my biggest influences, both people and moments throughout this career, if you want to call it that. I suppose I call it that. I need to stop downplaying it. I always do that. Can I call it a career? Yeah, of course I can. And then what I think's made sort of my online coaching business somewhat successful. And I'll probably touch on why I can only say somewhat successful when I think actually, if I be frank with myself, it's a pretty successful business. And how I've gone about implementing the changes that I think have made it most successful. So hopefully that'll be quite useful. And then if I've got time, which I'm sure I will have at the end, I'm going to talk about sort of my favourite and maybe least favourite moments of the last few years. And also my dreams / plans going forward. So strap in and get ready for a whole hour of my voice. And I want to sit back and relax whilst I lay it all out for you. So let's begin. Story time. So childhood. The reason I wrote childhood was because one of the clearest memories I've got of being a kid. This is hilarious actually when I think back to it. Every Wednesday, I went to where I'm from, where I grew up, Lincolnshire. There's an 11+. You did a test and then you went to one school or another. Both all boys schools. And I went to this school, this all boys school, obviously has its own impact anyway, up to year 11. And then obviously the girls get introduced. There are all girls schools around, so obviously we had friends, female friends. But one of my like clearest memories is every Wednesday, as I sort of got older and older, or actually throughout the whole of school, I would run at whatever time it was that it came out to this sports board and find out whether my name was on the team sheet for football and then rugby. I played football and rugby consistently from a young age, or I played football consistently from a young age, and then I played rugby when I started going to secondary school. And I loved playing sports. I loved being in a team. I loved working with people. I loved having a goal or a target or something to compete with. The bottom line was I was never that good. I was never that good at either of them. I would say at best I was like a squad player. In football, I didn't even make it to be a squad player. The local team I would go and train with them, and I'd never get signed up. Year after year, I would train religiously, week after week. My mum and stepdad would take me every week, and I'd never get signed up for the team. And it honestly was like, it slowly broke my heart. And then I realised that at the day that I did realise, like, oh, I'm not going to be a pro footballer. I'm pretty sure I cried, and that was at a young age. But it was never going to happen. Like, it was never ever going to happen. I was nowhere near good enough. I was a very small kid, wasn't particularly quick, wasn't particularly technically very good, but just loved playing football. But unfortunately, I was never very good at it. And then rugby came around in secondary school, and I was a bit better at that, but still squad player at best. Would be lucky to be on a starting team sheet. Normally a sub is what it is. And I think that had quite a big impact on me, because I always felt that I was never like excelling at anything. I was never really good at something, and that's all I wanted to be. And so I think that kind of shaped what happened with bodybuilding, because I continued with that sport all throughout secondary school, like I said, despite not being that good at it. I then went to uni, and I sort of had to make a decision like football or rugby. And honestly, whilst I preferred football, I knew more about football, tactically, technically, whatever. I just wasn't good at it. I was no good at it. And therefore I was like, there's no point in me going and playing football. I'll do rugby. And there was 2 rugby teams at Coventry University where I actually went, and I was a regular starter in the second team, which for me was like, yeah, that's cool, that's good enough. And I got picked for like the varsity match against Warwick and whatever. So I felt like a decently valued member of the team there, but I was never good. You know what I mean? I was okay at best. I made up the numbers, as it were. And it was at uni really that kind of football came into things. I wish. Bodybuilding came into things. When I was growing up, my mum, my stepdad, and my dad were all into training, all of them. So much so that my stepdad actually built like a very small gym, probably no bigger than this room, like on the side of the house that we lived in. Ironically, never set foot in there, or I did, and I hated it. I used to go in there, I would train, and my stepdad, all respect to his name, would try and help me, and I just didn't like it. I didn't like being told what to do. I just wanted to do my way, and I couldn't do that, because whenever I was in there was other people in there, and I just wanted to do my thing. So despite having this amazing opportunity to actually start building my physique, like Jeff Seed vibes, I never did it. I always shied away from it. I trained a bit here and there, like with schoolmates at gyms, but never stuck to anything. And therefore, or not therefore, but that was partly to do with it. I was a really small kid. So I went to uni. I hit puberty really late. I remember I've got distinct memories of being like 16, 17 and being like, Jesus Christ, when am I going to get armpit hair? Checking down my pants for any hair. And I hated that. I hated being small. I hated having no facial hair at the time. Like, that's not why I've got a beard now. And I just hated being this small, puny kid, no good at sports, not strong, not quick, just nothing special, nothing stand out about me. And so, having gone to uni, I kind of got away from that home gym, I guess, and I made friends with a guy that I started training with, and that really is when I started to fall in love with it. And I guess when I look back, my motivations for training were, I didn't want to train to like impress girls. I just wanted to be bigger than I was. I was probably touching 6 foot, maybe 5'10", 6 foot when I went to uni, but I was actually like 10, 11 stone, which I don't even know what that is in kilos, but it's pretty slim. Like, I had a very athletic build. I was very slim, and I didn't like that. I wanted to be bigger, so I started training. And once I caught the bug for that, the first year I trained, and I just trained to failure. I would just try and get as strong as I possibly could. I remember being buzzing the first time I benched like 100 kilos. And I just tried to get stronger. Without even knowing it, I progressively overloaded. And at that point, I wasn't educating myself or anything. I just thought, well, if I just train until I can't train anymore, like, I will get better. And obviously I saw a bit of a response from that. I then did actually start quite enjoying training with my stepdad when I come home for summer and things like that. So things had changed, and they'd moved house by then as well. So we were going to like a public gym, and it just felt different. It was actually in second year that I met a guy called Fraser, who's now still one of my closest friends. And he was much further along in that journey than me, but much bigger than I was, much more skilled at training, had done a lot more educating than I had. And he taught me loads about bodybuilding, about training. And then we sort of went on this kind of crusade together that was led by him. And that taught me so much. And I still say to this day, to anyone who's like starting out natural, feels like they're not getting anywhere, like, if you're not tracking your macros and you don't know exactly what you're eating on a day-to-day basis, like, that should be the first thing you change, because that skyrocketed my progress. All I had to do was start eating in the surplus and continue training hard to failure, and I remember seeing loads of progress. So basically my 3 years at uni were spent in a permabulk. I played rugby the first and the second year, and then I stopped in the third year, but I literally just tried to put on as much tissue as I could across those 3 years. And whether it's a mixture of genetics, luck, the work that I put in, I managed to put on about 5 stone. So come the end of uni, I was 15, or towards the end of uni, I was 15 stone, 100 kilos, and I was absolutely buzzing that I'd hit that body weight. And it was at that point that we decided that we were going to enter this competition, because, as I said, I went to uni in Coventry. Obviously nearby is Birmingham, the NEC, and back then obviously Body Power was a big deal, and they had all these shows on. They had UK BFF, they had all sorts of federations, and we just entered into this one because it was like super cheap. Must have been 15-30 quid to enter, and in the end we rocked up, and it was being judged by like Jacko De Bruyne, like Tavi Castro, and a few other people. So these obviously, these are like those OG influencers that we knew about. So we entered it, and we started this little 16-week prep whilst I was doing my dissertation, whilst I was at uni. And obviously that meant really that the nights out kind of got put to an end. It meant that we had, everyone had dissertations to do anyway, so it wasn't as busy. But we started this 16-week prep, and I got leaner than I'd ever got before. I remember having ab veins and thinking, oh my God, I'm ready. I've never seen this before, but obviously I was miles off. But that went well. That show went well for me. I came second out of like 70 competitors on day 2. And it was at that point that someone said to me, do you have an Instagram? And I was like, no. You should start one. So that was where the social media journey began. So that was my like first experience of competing. And as I said earlier, having gone through childhood, I never found anything that I was good at. Never found a home or a place, somewhere I felt I belonged. Having finally done all right at something, I didn't win, but second out of 70 people on one day for me was like mind blowing. And I just remember finally having this feeling of like, oh shit, I might be good at this. So that really lit a fire in my belly. I remember feeling quite emotional, achieving that. Obviously it's a lot of hard work, or it took a lot of hard work. Our dieting methods were horrendous. I'm not going to go into that today, but we did something called carb backloading, which you can go and look up if you want. I just advise you not to do it, because the science behind it is flawed and it's horrendous. But yeah, we did that, and then I remember thinking, yeah, I'll do this again. And obviously that was at the end of uni. So uni ends. I've started this Instagram, separate to my existing one, and I'm posting fitness content. I'm talking about what I'm doing. And God, you still be able to find those posts if you scroll years and years back. And I'd hate to know what's even in them, to be honest, but it began. And at that point, it'd become a lifestyle for me. My fitness power was a daily occurrence. Training would always happen. I would always train to failure. My appetite for knowledge and sort of self-education continued. I would listen to podcasts. I would listen to YouTube videos. I would educate myself. And I think I probably got fortunate in that I took my information from the right sources from early on. So obviously you can go on Instagram and you find all sorts of shit. You can find people telling you to do V-bar rows, for example. And I think I got quite lucky in that the people I followed, and if I think back like early days, it's like Josh for example, who I'll come on to later on. Josh Bridgman obviously was one of the earlier people that I followed, and I think I was following smart people, and these smart people were taking their information from even smarter people, and that meant that the information I was kind of taking on board was really useful, and therefore it helped me on that journey that I was going through. So uni comes to an end. I go back home to my mum's. I get a job in the John Lewis shop in Cambridge, and honestly, like, life was easy at that point because I was living at home. So I'd work 5 days a week in a shop, on a shop floor, live at home, minimal outgoings, minimum wage, like 12 grand a year, but obviously had no outgoings, so life was chill, like I was cotching. And but that doesn't mean that it was what I wanted to do. I always like I was working with people, and no disrespect to anyone that does this, but I was working with people that had been there on the shop floor in the same job for 25 years, and honestly, my God, I could not think of anything worse. Like, that to me would be torture. I used to clock watch all day. My days would go slowly, and I'd just spend my time thinking about what I'd rather be doing or how I'm going to get out of here and get a better job. But obviously what never stopped was my training. My training continued. I carried on training, and I carried on trying to better myself and better my physique and keep learning and grow this social media thing. But yeah, my God, I wanted out of that. And I remember this, I remember this real clear moment of, I'd finished uni, got this job, which was not my first choice, but it was a job nonetheless. And I remember my friend came to Cambridge to meet me for lunch one day, and he'd got a job in a bank in London. And I just was so bitter. I was so bitter and disappointed and unhappy with where I was at, and just thinking, this is shit. Like, when's my life going to change, sort of thing. And I'd always had that feeling, and I had it for a long, long time following that as well, which I'll come on to in sort of later life. But I wanted to talk about early adulthood and how I thought life would go versus how it actually went. So after this 8 months that I spent at John Lewis on the shop floor, as I said, still training, still trying to grow my Instagram, and just hoping something would come along, I decided to apply for a job in the head office of John Lewis. Really entry level job. In John Lewis they have like levels, so like level 1 is like MD, and then level 10 is like shop floor staff. So I went from a 10 to a 9, and I got this entry level job at head office. Now, I did English and journalism at uni because I found writing quite easy. I found I had a way with words on paper or on the computer. And so I did English and journalism because I thought it'd be relatively easy, and I was like, maybe I'll be a sports journalist. But honestly, I had no idea, and I still had no idea. But I got this job at John Lewis head office. Again, starting salary like £18,900. Moved to London, spent 650 quid a month on rent, 200 quid a month on food, and didn't leave myself with much. Maybe left myself with 200-300 left over, which meant that I spent this period of time really quite miserable. Because my expectation of life, and this is what I was going to get onto, was that, I'd finish uni, I'd get a good job, I got my degree, I'd get a good job, I'd be on 35k, be comfortable, and then I'd just work my way up, and that's what I thought would happen. But instead I got this job at John Lewis in the shop, and then in the head office. Had no money, didn't even enjoy the job, was not very good at it either because it was all Excel spreadsheets and numbers. I don't know why they ever gave me the job, but it was all about numbers, and I'm terrible with numbers. I got like a C at GCSE maths, like, numbers are not my forte. And so I remember getting there on like day 1 or day 2 and being shown like this Excel spreadsheet and thinking, what have I done here? Like, I am so far out of my depth. But obviously I was there. Thankfully they were really patient with me. John Lewis is a nice place to work, there's no doubt about that. And I just cracked on, and I was like, right, I'll just work hard, I'll try and get promoted, and then my finance will be a bit better and I'll be a bit happier. And that went on for probably 18 months. I was in this job, but again, still training every day. That was my outlet. I would go to work. People might go out for drinks or whatever. I'd just go home. I'd have a meal. I'd go and train. I'd come home, chill out for an hour, and then go to bed and then do it all again. And that was my life for like the following sort of 18 months. And I did one show actually in that period of time. I sort of stepped up and did the UK BFF show. And that was the first show that I won, which you've heard me speak about before. But that was the UK BFF Juniors in Wales, the Welsh Grand Prix or whatever, and I won it. And it was at that point I was like, oh shit, I think we might be on something here. And I always had this feeling of like, there's something better for me out here. There's something, but I'm gonna do something. I didn't know what it was. I had no idea what it was, but it was like blind faith, delusion, if you like. I had delusions of grandeur, but just like a almost delusional confidence that something would come along. And I know I've referenced that a few times, but I think it's really important. And I still think that is one of the things that has led me to get to this point. I always just thought there's something out there. There's something about me. There's something that I will do. It will come along. And despite it never coming along until much, much later down the line, I still just worked towards something. I thought I was working towards something bigger. And obviously, gladly that has come to some level of fruition. But I had this expectation that, I'd fall into this nice job, it'd be easy, bang, 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 just work the way up. And instead, I spent the first sort of 2 years in London pretty miserable. Did manage to get a promotion after a while, which I think took me to like 28 grand, which made things much more comfortable. I wasn't at this point running out of money at the end of the month and like waiting for that next paycheck to come in. And that is a horrible feeling. I really hated that feeling, and that's one that I've always not wanted to ever have again. Because it sucks. There's no doubt about that. Like, it's a shit feeling. Financial worries are not nice, and I don't envy anyone that has to worry about things like that. But I've been there, and I tried to work my way out of it, and luckily with work, it happened. So then I guess it makes sense to talk about sort of John Lewis and how I managed competitive bodybuilding alongside that. And the answer is probably not very well, but the answer is that this is luck. John Lewis was, as I said, a really nice place to work, very understanding. I really kept myself to myself in terms of bodybuilding. People knew I went to the gym and that, but if I do a show at the weekend, I would make sure I like booked the Monday and Tuesday off so that I could scrub the tan off and come in and no one ever know about it. I would never share my Instagram, the fitness one, and there would be no reason for anyone to find it. I worked with majority females, so not interested in competitive bodybuilding. And I lived two lives. I lived two lives for probably 5 years. It was only when I got into the sort of final like rung of John Lewis, I guess, or my run at John Lewis, that people were a bit more aware of what I was doing, but they still didn't understand the extent of what I was doing. In terms of, by this point, I was competing for the pro card. I'd gained a decent enough following, working towards 10k or whatever. And for me, it was very serious. For me, I was doing something that meant the world to me, and I was hungry because I guess it was at this point that I realised, like, maybe this is my ticket out. Maybe this is that bigger something that I've been looking for. So in those final few years at John Lewis, how did I manage competing alongside it? Well, rarely ever went out on any social occasions. Maybe Christmas, maybe like Black Friday, because that was obviously a big day in retail. But I was just solely focused on what I was doing. I would wake up, I'd go to work, I would leave work, I would train nearby, and then I would get home at probably 8 or 9, prep my meals for the next day and go again. And then obviously as prep rolls around, you then had cardio into that, you had steps into that. But I had to make it happen. I was so hungry for this, whatever something bigger was, which eventually was, that journey to that pro card, that nothing else really mattered. I would go to work and I would perform because I wanted to get promoted and I wanted to get pay rises and I wanted to earn more money. But really my passion was outside of that. It was always the training. It was always building on things outside of John Lewis. And I guess there came a point for me, which was around the time that I was probably looking to shoot for the pro card, that maybe even after, I remember sitting in a meeting and watching one of our heads of like talk about sales or whatever. And to earn the sort of money that I wanted to earn, like I knew I had to like get to his job, which would have been 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 promotions away. So we're talking, I don't even know, man, 10, 15 years away. And I remember listening to him speak and hearing the passion in his voice, and I was like, Jesus Christ, I do not mirror that passion for, at one point, selling jumpers, at the next point, optimizing a website to sell jumpers. Like, just wasn't there for me. There was no fire. Like, I applied myself because that's all I've always known, and I knew that was my only route to earning more money and eventually having a better life. But there was no passion there for me. There really wasn't. I have just always put my everything into whatever I'm doing, because, why do any less? Like, what is the point in that? So, there was a few sort of quite defining moments for me, I guess, in those last few years at John Lewis. But I've spoken about that prep, loads of times before. It purely is a case of, it comes down to time management. It comes down to making time for what you have to do. And that for me was not a big cost, because, as I said, it was all I wanted at that time. That hunger I had for that pro card, that desperation, that ache I had to win that pro card was so deep that nothing was going to stand in my way, apart from finances or potentially time and health. And when that final season came, in terms of trying to turn pro, I think I did 4 shows pretty much in a row. They were like 2 or 3 weeks apart. Some of them were 1 week apart. And it was grueling, but I don't have memories of it being painful. I really don't. I've always said that often that 9 to 5 setup helped me, because it really does force you back into a corner. Like, I had to get done. I had to get it done. I had to prep my meals that night. I had to get up at 5 or half 5 to go to the gym, do cardio. I had to have my bag packed. I had to then do my cardio, shower, get ready for work. I had to be at work. I couldn't not be at work. And then at lunch I'd have time and I'd go and walk. But all the time you're busy. And I guess doing that work in between the periods of, or the windows of eating, meant that some days it flew by, which was great. But the single answer for how I managed it was time management and making it as frictionless as possible. Like, I moved to a gym that was right next to work, so that I could go to work, cardio, work, and then train back at that gym after work, and then go home. And that was just Groundhog Day. I did it every day for 6 months, and I did them 4 shows, and then obviously, lo and behold, the final one, the Nordic Pro or Nordic show in IFBB Nordic show in Denmark, Copenhagen. It's actually Ringsted technically. I came up trumps, and I knew that it was going to happen sooner or later. But I placed so much pressure on myself that year because, and I've said this time and time again, and I still don't think people believe me, but I wouldn't have carried on if I hadn't have won my pro card that year. I was ready to stop, because I realised I was hemorrhaging money on it, hemorrhaging my health, hemorrhaging relationships and life experience at the time. For what? The risk to reward or the cost to benefit ratio was just not there for me if I hadn't turned pro, or at least I didn't believe it to be. So me winning that show in Denmark was I think it was either my last chance or my second to last chance. There was one more show that I had lined up, which would have been a Spanish one, but luckily, I hate using that word, I obviously won that show. And I remember immediately social media blew up. I got all these client inquiries. I got a load of more followers. I think I hit 10k around that time, obviously. So then you get the swipe up function, and I had a few clients at this time already, but maybe 10, maybe 15 alongside working, which I'd do at the weekend. And then more inquiries came in, and I was like, oh shit, here we go. So that was when I started thinking, at very least, I could have enough clients to fund my bodybuilding, and then my money from my career is whatever, eventually mortgage and stuff like that. So that was kind of my thesis at the time. But obviously what happened then was COVID came around. So COVID comes around. At this time, I'm living in Wandsworth with my girlfriend at the time. I am earning okay money in terms of like corporate, but still nowhere near I wanted to, and definitely not on a trajectory that I was overly happy with. Still training, still doing all that, because obviously I just turned pro, and I was obviously thinking, give me 2 years and I'll start doing some pro shows. And lockdown came in, and I remember thinking, yeah, right. I said there's so much in that time period. I was like, this would be like Ebola. It would come and go in 2 weeks. And then obviously it got a bit more serious. And then they called us into a meeting at work and said, you're all going to have to work from home for the next 12 weeks. And it could be longer. But we were like, yeah, right, whatever. But okay, cool. So lockdown came in. They sent us home. We went back to my parents to be out of the flat, to be somewhere with outdoor space. And literally spent the summer there, because lockdown started in March. So we did that. And honestly, when that came in, I was like, that's me done. That's online coaching done. I was like, I'm going to lose all my clients. But after a bit of panic setting initially, I was like, no, hang on. These people still need your help. And whether they're going to leave or not, you still have a duty to provide a service to them. So I very, very quickly started researching home workouts. I was like, how am I going to program home workouts? I've never done this before in my life. So I very quickly started researching home workouts. I remember looking at Joe Bennett. He puts content out. Obviously, I was coached by Callum at the time, so that was really helpful. Like James Muscle Mentors, all those guys are putting useful workouts out. And I started building plans for everyone. The first thing I did was build a generic home training plan with 3 tiers to it, based on equipment. So based on no equipment, please buy bands. Please buy bands and like D handles, and we can sort of work things out that way. 2 was like bands, dumbbells, and bands and light dumbbells, and then 3 was like bands, light dumbbells, bench. So I built these 3 tiers of plans, which hopefully I thought would cater for everyone within that time period, and it did. My clients was like, oh, I'm going to buy this, I'm going to buy this, and I was like, oh shit, okay, they're sticking around, and I really turned that into like a huge opportunity for myself from what I thought initially was going to be an absolute disaster, because I could see everyone panicking. But what I did was just very carefully took this information in that I'd had from the Muscle Mentors, from Joe Bennett, from Instagram in general, and from what I already knew about training. Because by this point, while I was still working at John Lewis, I'd spent weekends going up to these Muscle Mentor seminars. I would work Monday to Friday, then I'd get a train up to Birmingham, stay Friday, Saturday, Sunday to do a seminar, and then go back to London and work on the Monday. And I'd get back to work and people would be like, oh, Joe, how was your weekend? They'd be like, yeah, it was all right. So behind the scenes, I was working really hard. I was working overtime to become a better online coach for my clients. And I didn't have the money to invest back then, but I was doing it anyway. And that, for me, I'm going to talk about later in terms of biggest influence is actually the next section. Like the Muscle Mentors, for example, just absolutely incredible. It's a shame they're not around anymore, but I know James Sutton is working on a new project, which I definitely endorse and encourage anyone to get involved in that wants to become a better online coach, not a better businessman, which is the first step anyway. And so this knowledge that I'd gained over the years, and then over the seminars and from educating from the right people, put me in a position to be able to continue to provide a really good service for my current clients. And then obviously, once I'd sort of got settled into lockdown, I was realizing that actually I had a bit more time. I was working from home every day, and there was quiet periods in the day. I'm not gonna cap. There were quiet periods in the day where I could sneak off of my computer and onto my personal computer and work on my online coaching. So that's what I did. And during that lockdown, I was trying to be as upbeat as possible. I kept putting content out. I was showing people my workouts. I was showing people maybe what to do with their calories during this time. I was really, really lucky enough, and I'm sure you won't be listening to this, but shout out James Bacon, who helped me with a facility to train at during that time. So I was able to sort of keep this content going. For the first 4 weeks I trained at home, and I remember literally having a breakdown, and I remember being like, I can't do this anymore. I was like, I'm a fucking pro bodybuilder. I cannot keep doing these band workouts. And my girlfriend at the time said to me, are you sure you don't know anyone that's got a little facility? And I was like racking my brains. And then finally I thought of someone. And it wasn't ideal by any means. I would, in order to make this happen, I would wake up at 4:30, 5 a.m. during lockdown. I would drive an hour in my little 1 Series out into the sticks, this little shed. I would go in the little shed, and I'm not joking, the shed was half the size of this room, but it had what I needed in it to train. And I trained. And me and Cal did a recomp in that time, so I had interesting content come in. I could show people workouts, which I think rather than feeling jealous, people felt like inspired by it. That it gave them something to look at and watch, and a journey to continue watching. So I kept it coming, and I still kept the home content coming. And I guess I just tried to be like a bit of a shining light in that time for clients and for followers, to try and help people with what everyone was going through, because we were all, somewhat in this together. And then by doing that, and in combination with that to what I did with my business during that time, with this, having more time to work on it, was what I think made, well, it's not what I think, this is what made my business. I went from around 30 clients at the start of lockdown to, my goal was 60. I wanted to get to 60, and then I'll be able to have my notice in at my job. I think I ran it right up into the 80s 80 something clients, which for me, my mind was blown. I was like, how have I done this? And as I said, it was because of one, the content I kept putting out. I kept showing up every day with content for people on Instagram to follow, to give workout ideas to give, nutrition ideas to. And then the other thing I did was looked at my business and look, how can I make this better? How can I make this more attractive? How can I make people want to invest in Team Brightman or Brightman Fitness? And what I did was I introduced some things that I'd learned from, my corporate life. And I'm going to come on to talk about what I think's made my coaching successful. But that corporate background gave me a real good insight into what professionalism looks like. I worked in online marketing, if it were, digital marketing within John Lewis. So there was a lot of emails, all the customer facing emails would have to be, we'd have meeting after meeting after meeting just to sign off one email. It would be checked, it would be rechecked, it would be checked again. So, and obviously being a massive company presenting things to customers, it had to look polished, it had to look perfect. And that is what I saw was missing in the coaching industry. My first coach, Rob of Team LRF, he got me my pro card, but he won't mind me saying this either, but looking at his what he delivered as a product, it was bare bones. Like, he sent me my training plan on an email, it was written out, and my diet on a WhatsApp, and that was normal back then. That's not any shade on him, because that was just what was happening. But I saw it everywhere, and I was like, we can do so much better than this. I wanted people to, pay for my service, receive their documents and their coaching experience, and be like, oh wow, this is worth the money, because that would make them stay, and that would make them realize that it was better than elsewhere. And fancy documents don't make up a good online coaching service, but that, combined with the information that I had armed myself with over the years, meant that I was able to combine those two and provide a very personal but very professional and very polished looking product. And everyone likes things that look nice. You cannot deny it. Even people that don't appreciate things that look nice, I think, would prefer to be given something that looks nice than doesn't. So that was a real point of, or I guess like a USP for me, and I ran with that. And how that drove inquiries. Number one, the main thing I remember doing was pulling this information pack together. So I call it now is like a service outline document, and it outlines my mission as a coach, because I was a solo coach at the time, the gap in the market that I saw and that I wanted to fill. I sort of spoke about what I think is wrong with the industry and what I want to make right about it. And then obviously I detailed, this is what your document's going to look like. This is how we're going to check in. You're going to get video responses. It's really high quality. You're going to get this progress tracker, which is all color coded, and you can plot it out and you can fill it in on the go. You will get your nutrition plan, and it will be all macro broke down. There's going to be food choices, and I implemented all these things bit by bit by bit to create this really complete service. I built training plans where you had everything laid out for you. There was videos to follow if you were unsure. If there weren't videos, there were really well written verbal tutorials of how to perform movements. So I really went to town on making this a service to be proud of. I remember saying that to myself. I remember thinking, I want this to be something that I'm proud to deliver, a product that I believe in. And that was really the key for me. And that is what I think meant that I was able to attract, clients. That was the other thing I did in lockdown, because obviously all these movements are quite new for people. I spent time filming them all. So I went out and I filmed them all on my phone, and I uploaded them onto Google Drive, and I made sure that all clients had access to them. All these like banded dumbbell RDLs and the wall hack squat that everyone probably remembers. I filmed them all, and I made sure that everyone was able to understand exactly how to train. So I did a lot. in that lockdown, and I'm really proud of what I did, because if I didn't, there's no way I would have the business I have now. And anyway, as that lockdown ended, and I realised that I was turning what was going to be a disaster into an opportunity, a massive opportunity, I was able to hand my notice in at work. I handed my notice in at work the day we completed on our mortgage, because obviously I didn't want to change. I didn't want to leave my job and then jeopardise that. So completed on the mortgage, handed my notice in same day, moved into the flat, and just continued. At this point, I had to make it work. Like, I'd taken the leap of faith. And someone asked me, what made me in the question thing. what made me take that leap of faith, what made me invest in myself. And it was a conversation that I had with Callum Raystrick, one of the most influential people in my whole life, undoubtedly. I was on the phone to him. No, I wasn't. I was texting actually. I was out on a walk during lockdown whilst I was still working at John Lewis, but doing this online coaching thing on the side. And I'm sure he won't mind me saying this, but he said he literally instilled the belief in me that I needed. And he said, Joe, you can do this. Like, you can absolutely do it. I must have had, I don't know, 12,000 followers by then, more than enough to build a coaching business. I was obviously a pro at this point. So from an outsider's view, like, yeah, why couldn't I make it work? But obviously I didn't believe it. He really opened my eyes to the earning potential of online coaching in that conversation. And it was at that point I was just like, yeah, fuck it. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to set this number. This is the minimum I need. This is what I want. And when I get that, I'm going to leave my job. And that's what I did. So Callum was really the reason. He was the guy that gave me the push to do it. All throughout that period of time, I remember talking to Josh and Tom, messaging them, telling my plans, telling them what I was going to do. They were ever encouraging as ever. They'd already sort of established themselves within this solo entrepreneurial journey. Obviously, Josh being a coach, Tom being a content creator and member site owner as well as an online coach. So I had the backing from all these people, and obviously had the backing from my family, and that, you know, all that support enabled me to just go for it, which is what I did. And I think I've spoken about what I think's made my online coaching successful, but the professionalism is undoubtedly the USP that I had for a long time, I think, or one of the USPs that I had, or something that differentiated my business. The next thing is that I tried to be a good online coach before a good businessman, and that went on for ages, years. I still haven't had any business mentoring. I'm still working it all out as I go. But my passion for providing a service to people that takes into account their goals, not my goals, their health, and this buzzword of optimality and being optimal is 100% the undertone or the reason why I've been good at what I do, because I provide a polished service that looks nice, that feels nice, that looks valuable, it feels valuable. I'm very personal with anyone. I'm very on hand for anyone. And I've continually improved that service. So I don't give people a reason to leave unless we don't get on. And that's happened a few times as well. And I think that, again, is why I'm good at what I do, because I tell people how it is. And if someone needs or deserves smoke blown up their ass, I will blow the smoke up their ass in terms of my clients. And if they don't, they won't get it. And they might not like that. But for me, that means that what I say carries some weight and carries some value. And I would much rather be told something meaningful when it means something, rather than just because you want to hear it. So I think they're the reasons why it's sort of been successful to this point. Obviously, following that, sort of establishing myself, I was then in this position. I was able to bring Luke on board, which hopefully you've watched the YouTube video I put out on Tuesday, the 17th of May, which explains how well Luke's done over the first 18 months. You know, a 21-year-old kid doing the numbers that he's doing, providing the service that he's providing. There's no one doing it better. There is no one doing it better. And I beg someone to try and prove me there is. Not at his age, not with his skill set, and not at the price that he costs. He is unbelievably reasonably priced for what he delivers. And I can guarantee that every single one of the clients that he has worked with over the last 18 months would testify to that. The kid is incredible. He is going far, and he will be rewarded handsomely for staying as part of Team Brightman for as long as he does, which I hope is forever, honestly, because I'm sort of coming on to what I want to do in the future now. But I don't want this to be Joe Brightman and his two coaches. I want this to be a collective of at the moment, obviously with Max just coming on board, 3 coaches. And that's something that I'll come on to in a minute as well. My biggest influences, obviously, I've already mentioned Callum. I've already mentioned people like Josh and Tom. But I feel like I should go over that again. I have to put Callum at number 1 in terms of people within fitness that have influenced me. He is my biggest inspiration in terms of business. my biggest inspiration with regards to like physique development is honestly myself, and I don't mean that in an egotistical way, but I mean that in that I've just wanted to be the best that I can be as a physique athlete. I like my physique. I always have liked it. I just want it to be better than it is currently, and a better version of that. So my inspiration for that is me. Like I don't aspire to be anyone in terms of physique, especially not now. I obviously there's a lot of physiques I aspire to, or I take inspiration from, or motivation from is perhaps more accurate. But there's no one I want to look like. And the reason is because I can't. I can only be me. I can only look like me, but just a better version of me. So that's why I don't have any physique inspirations. But in terms of business and just how he carries himself as a gentleman, Callum is the GOAT, in my opinion. I absolutely love him to bits. And I'm sure he doesn't even listen to these podcasts because he's so damn busy. But he needs shouting out whenever possible. I have to probably secondly shout out Josh, just in terms of someone that drives me forward every single day. And I often worry about my ability to reflect and my ability to sit there and say, oh, well done, Joe, you've done all right here. Because, and the reason for that is because of the people that I surround myself with. Josh in particular, like, he is someone that, if I think I'm doing well, all I need to do is just take a look at him and realise, nope, you got a long way to go, which is as motivating as it is. Like, I don't know. I was gonna say a bad word, but it's not. It is only motivating. I just wish I was a little better at appreciating what I've done, because I do fear. And my mum and dad have always said this, or my mum and stepdad have always said this. Like, when will you be happy? And the answer is I don't know. The answer to that. I don't mean happy in general. It just means happy and satisfied with what I've done. Because as unhealthy as this is, the way that I look at it, no matter what I achieve at what point, like, still someone doing way better than me. And I've always thought about, I don't know if this is a quote or just a sort of statement, but you have to remember, you're only ever showing off to people that have less than you. And that is a really powerful thing to think about, because people doing better than you, they don't care. They're so focused on what they're doing that they literally can care about your achievements. So when you're showing off, you're just showing off to people that have less than you, which may well value. People may well value that, and they may see it as inspiration themselves. But to me, it just seems crass, and therefore, I'm not sure at what point I was celebrating my achievements. There's been a couple of cool moments where I've like bought a car that I really liked. I think particularly when I swapped the 1 Series for the Velar. That was amazing. That was a pinch me moment. But there's people. That's cool. You got a Velar, cool, man. Like, there's someone out there with a Ferrari, so you better work harder. Whilst I really appreciate those moments, and they're pretty incredible, it is just like material things, and there's much more important things, I think, to aim for and strive towards. So, yeah, influences: Callum, Josh, Tom has been a big influence for me and a big support network throughout this. Well, ever since he sort of befriended me, as it were. Louis Blackmore, massive influence, not necessarily business or physique wise, but actually just mindset and like mental health and awareness. Self-awareness has been huge. And then I guess like my family, my stepdad, my dad, my mum, they all have like very different but incredible qualities that I take a lot from in each of them. My stepdad, I always said, if I could be half the man he is in terms of business, then I would be a happy man. It's not true. Or at least I really realise it's not. The pot at the end, but the pot at the end of the rainbow moves. He built a business from the age of 30, started a business at 30 and sort of finished around 55, which meant that I've sort of seen it all. When I was growing up, I was mostly, well, not mostly, but my first few years were sort of spent with a single mum. Big up Sharon. And as someone with work ethic and just an ability to get shit done when it needs to happen, when your back's against the wall. Like, I think back to what my mum must have done to bring me up. She was training to be a nurse and a midwife. She was 21 when she had me. And she managed to bring me up whilst training to be a midwife and a nurse, being 21, feeding me, feeding herself, paying rent. It blows my mind. And therefore, I dare say that some of that work ethic comes from her. She is someone that always drilled into me, particularly about like illness and not showing up. Like, you always show up. Even if you're ill, you show up. And if you get sent home, you get sent home, but you show up. And that attitude, I think, is definitely rubbed off on me. And then my dad, who quite simply is one of the most supportive, kind, caring people that I've ever known and probably ever will know. I always say to new people, if they meet my dad, like, he's one of the nicest men you'll meet. And he also has a bit of a never give up attitude, I think, a get shit done attitude. And that's something that I admire. But the thing I admire the most about him is his temperament as a person. Unbelievable level of support. I've been literally texting him this morning because he's saying, "Are you sorting my flights for America so I can come and watch?" Like, he did everything for his family, and that for me is something that I obviously appreciate massively and take a huge amount from. So they're probably my biggest influences, I think. And I spoke here about biggest influences in terms of moments. I guess I've already touched on sort of COVID was a big moment, whilst a very long moment, a big moment. Winning my pro card, huge moment. That sort of flipped things on its head. And then the smaller ones, so just the little improvements I've made to my business over time. So introducing free consult calls. I've been doing this for now 3 years. The uptake I got from that was crazy. Unfortunately now everyone's doing it, so you might have missed the boat on that. The information pack was a big moment that helped influence the business. This podcast is a big moment. Not this one, but as a collective. And I think just coming across Callum as a person. I know I've already mentioned Callum, but coming across Callum as a person was a huge moment. So they are my biggest influences. Now, I've written here to talk about my favourite and least favourite moments. There are quite a lot of questions around a few questions around like, how am I? Mental health, the gyno procedure, loneliness. How am I doing? Am I putting myself back out there now on the market, as it were? And this is not a gossip podcast. I'm not going to go into that in too much detail, but the gyno thing didn't really bother me. It's one of the things that's like a slow burner. And once it's there was only one choice. And it had to be cut out. And therefore I looked at it very objectively, which was, this is going to be unpleasant, but it's going to benefit me in the long run, and I have to do it. And therefore that was the mindset I took towards that procedure, and I was right. It was horrible, and it got more complicated than it needed to as well, but it had to be done, and it's done, and now I'm fine, and I'm happy with the scars, and so that's that. So I didn't have any mental issues with that, really. Physically it was fucking agony, and the first night after getting home, fainting while stood at the toilet and nearly hitting my head on the corner of the bath whilst in the flat on my own was a pretty scary moment. But once I realised I was fine and just a bit shaken up, then I was good to go. So that just is what it is. It had to be done. I had to get it done. How am I now? Right now, really good. I think I've had a sketchy 18 months prior to the last couple of months. Because of like personal life reasons, sort of. I guess I figured that I had my life planned out with like a previous partner, but once that gets removed, whoever's doing it was, your plan kind of goes out the window. You have a timeline, and losing that plan, losing that timeline was something I found quite unsettling, I think. But now I look at that differently. Again, something that had to happen, I think. The right decision. And something that you just have to deal with now. And I realised that I'd spent enough time in limbo, wondering about the decision that I'd made or what had happened. And sooner or later, you have to move on from these things, because that will only hold you back, I think. But what it did teach me is an awful lot of gratitude for the business that I've got, because on any days when I didn't feel like it, didn't feel like getting up, didn't feel like getting out of bed, didn't feel like doing work, I had no choice, and that is invaluable. People rely on me to help them with their lives effectively. You know, obviously their physique goals, but their lives as well. And therefore, I have no choice but to get out of bed and get working. So that's kind of, I guess, quite a big, an influential thing within a darker moment. And yeah, my favourite moments, I guess I sort of spoke about them in terms of influences, but obviously winning my pro card is literally still probably the best day of my life. I've never felt elation like it. New York Pro was a really good moment. Getting back from the States last year was a really terrible moment when I felt like my body was physically broken and I felt like my mind was broken because I wasn't really sure what to do. But again, I was able to lift the weight off my shoulders just by making a decision in terms of, do I carry on competing or do I call it a day? I hope that I have more favourite moments this year in terms of competing. Classic has always been the dream, and I've not really touched on stuff going forwards, which I'll do now for the last few minutes, but Classic has always been a dream for me. It's the classic physique, the old school physiques are always the ones I've aspired to. Men's physique I think is amazing, don't get me wrong, but it always was a stepping stone for me should I make it to this level. And I'm bloody excited to execute this prep. So I hope there's more favourite moments coming this year. In terms of my plans going forward, there was the question around my mental health and the reasons around potentially stepping away next year. My mental health isn't the reason for stepping away from bodybuilding. It's actually more my physical health. And I will, at this point, I will know better to never say never. But I will definitely not be competing next year because I have weddings and stag do's, and I want to, after missing this summer or having been planned to miss this summer with prep, I want to make sure that I live a life next year. So I will not be competing next year. I will be coming off the drugs after these shows, which again is not optimal in terms of muscle retention, but I want kids and therefore I want to make sure that I can have them. So I'll be looking to get that all sorted. And in terms of business, there was a lot of questions about clothing. So the next line of t-shirts, the next run of t-shirts are in production. So they will hopefully be out during this prep, and I'm excited for them. They will be the last time that I do a Brightman run of clothing because I want to move away from that. I don't want to be selling merch per se. I want a brand. And I don't know if I've made this real public news, or public information, but like clothing is like my blue sky dream. If I could be successful at anything, I would love to have a clothing brand. So I will definitely be working towards that, and I've got things in place now that mean that will be worked towards. But for now, eyes are on the prize in terms of we've got prep, we've just launched Max, so the immediate goals are to continue growing Team Brightman as a collective. And I'm super confident we're going to do that because Max is incredible, Luke is incredible, and I'm all right. So immediately, continue growing Team Brightman, launch this next run of clothing, and then I will begin to look at the thing after that. And in terms of my idea, which I think I'm happy to be pretty open about with regards to clothing, or am I? I see a gap in the market at the moment in terms of clothing for people like me. And that I think is where a lot of products get born out of. I see a gap in the market for things that I want to wear at certain times, is what I will say. But when I release the next thing after this last run of Brightman, I want it to be a capsule, I want it to be a drop. It's not going to be t-shirts, it will be a full capsule of clothing. And it's just a case of getting it designed and getting it worked on right now and produced and manufactured. But these things take time, and I'm aware of that. So for now, my priority, my absolute priority is prep and my coaching clients as our collective, and we will continue to build this team and the features that we offer. The fortnightly Zoom calls with all clients over the last few months have been incredible, really insightful, really useful for the guys. They all get recorded and sent out. I've just introduced a brand new sort of consult process as well. So now every consult call, which is still free, is going to be more of a client discovery call where they can jump on the call, they send their pictures beforehand, and we will give them a physique assessment for free. We will assess their goals and how they get from A to B, obviously for free. And then it's up to them at the end of the call whether they want to jump into coaching and who they want to jump in with, myself, Luke or Max. and they have obviously different prices, so it's, you know, it's accessible for everyone, or everyone who should be looking at online coaching. And so that is my priority for now, because now I have an added responsibility. I want to build Max into an online coach in his own right, and one that has authority, like I believe Luke does now. So that's my immediate goal. And then me and Josh have been discussing over the last couple of weeks something a bit more seriously, which I think I definitely can talk about because he's had it on his story a few times, which is potentially a gym at some point. And our discussions will continue. I think we have a long way to go, because I think we know a lot, but I think there's so much we don't know, and you don't know what you don't know. So we need to research a lot. We need to do a lot of work to make sure that we are capable of building something like this. And I don't doubt that if we get the right people, the right brains, the right information, we can build something really special. So that's potentially a little plan moving forward also. Wow, I managed to speak for an hour and 3 minutes about myself. Who knew? I hope you found that interesting. I'm going to leave it here. We will all be back next week, I'm sure. And thanks for listening if you got all this way. I hope that was interesting. And you won't need to hear from me on my own now for who knows how long. But hopefully that gave you an insight into me. Peace out. See you next week.